Broughan.
Thanks, Can. Taoiseach, I think up to yesterday, 148 of our fellow citizens were killed on the roads. That represents an increase, I think, of 25 since last year. And of course, those 148 families of the victims are totally devastated. Many of our own communities, I think across virtually every constituency, people are devastated by this ongoing carnage. Indeed, I think since you've been Taoiseach in March 2011, something like 1,000 people have died on our roads, and perhaps 15,000 have been seriously injured. Now, the chairperson of the Road Safety Authority, our former colleague Deputy Liz O'Donnell, drew attention once again to the fact that during your administration you slashed the size of the Garda Traffic Corps by half. From something like 1,200, I think, around the time of the crash, down to just barely 700 now. So can I just ask you, firstly, then, in relation to the additional 85 million budget and your plan for An Garda Síochána to have 15,000 members, I think 21,000 in the whole service, down to 2021, if you now will bring the strength of the Garda Traffic Corps back up to what it was in the past, when we succeeded, I think, as a community in halving road traffic deaths from approximately 400 a year to about 200. And secondly, can I just ask you in relation to the Department of Transport and the Department of Justice, one of the difficulties of traffic law is that the Department of Transport, as two ministers down here know, makes policy and the Department of Justice has to implement it. But we get a lot of gaps and failures, I think, by the court service, by the Department of Justice. I could just draw your attention to one or two of those, in particular Section 22 of the 2002 Road Traffic Act, which makes it an offence not to present your licence in court if requested to do so. Yet research or questions that were answered at the instigation, I think, of the outstanding Park Road Safety Group in 2014-15, it showed that perhaps 70% of people coming to court didn't present their licences. The Minister Fitzgerald undertook to take action on that, but when prosecutions were brought forward last November, Judge Mary Keane struck them down, the first and only 21 such prosecutions. And for the past year, the Minister has been having consultations with the Garda Commissioner and consultation with her department and the Department of Transport, and nothing has been done about this. As the two former Ministers for Transport beside you there know, also Section 42 of the 2010 Act hasn't yet been brought in 6-7 years later. That's the third payment option. So there's a lot of anomalies and failure, I think, to coordinate between the Department of Transport and the Department of Justice. And the court service in particular, I think, needs to be upgraded. And the final point, Taoiseach, I noticed you only provided something like €4 million for the upgrading of the IT systems of the court service, and yet there's a huge dearth of information being sent by the court service to the RSA and the Department of Transport. Thanks, Can.
Taoiseach.
Obviously, Deputy Broughan referred to traffic accidents and deaths at Cancorla, and these are always tragic and so sad. And obviously, despite every encouragement that you can make and every incentive or initiative, they still happen and will continue to happen. And we regret the loss of life in that regard. It's a matter for the Commissioner to determine the allocations of Gardaí to the different sectors of the Gardaí, including the Traffic Corps. That's a matter of day-to-day management. It's a matter of public politics for the government to make a decision to reopen the training college in Templemore, to increase the input into that, where 800 Gardaí will now be trained per year, to make a political decision to bring the Garda strength to 15,000, and that means an extra 4,000 civilian staff by 2021, an extra 2,000 Garda reserve numbers, and you bring the force up to that level. Obviously, there are budgetary requirements there, and these are determined by the allocations to the different sectors. I'm not sure of the issues about the Section 22, but technology is now advanced to a state where, obviously, when an arrest is made or when somebody is apprehended, obviously the technology will indicate whether there's a driving licence or insurance, or whether there are any charges pending or whatever like that. These are matters that have to be looked at. I don't know the detailed answer to the two questions you've raised in respect to Section 22, and I think you said Section 44, but I'll have the Minister respond to Deputy Broughan in respect of those.
And I welcome the Taoiseach's answer, but I think in relation to the traffic corps, I mean, there's clearly a requirement. We've heard so often, I think, from people in the Road Safety Authority about the absolute necessity for additional invigilation. The chairperson, again, at the Road Safety Authority referred to the European Driver Attitude Survey, and it showed clearly, I think, that people in this country have half the expectation, or they're half as likely to be stopped in a maths check or now the MITS check as do people in the rest of Europe. So there clearly is an onus. I know it's an operational matter for the Commissioner. I commend the Commissioner, by the way, for the fact that she has waived fees for documents for victims of families of victims of road traffic crashes, and because they used to be those fees were incredibly expensive. But I would ask you to request the Minister for Justice and the Garda Commissioner to bring the Traffic Corps back up to strength. There's a big case, perhaps, Taoiseach, for having it as a distinct unit, maybe with a separate command almost, within An Garda Síochána. And secondly, to ask the Department of Justice, which has been dragging its heels, and the Court Service in relation to IT systems, transfer of information to RSA, and also bringing in here the legislation that we need. One of the Section 44 that I referred to, by the way, is actually on the floor. It's the Court's bill, and if we wanted to, obviously, we could have it passed before Christmas. Thanks.
You raise an interesting point, Deputy Broughan, and I'm quite sure that as Chairman of the Transport Committee, that the Minister for Justice would be very happy to attend and discuss the issues there with you. I do note that the capital expenditure made available by the Government over the last number of years has been of great assistance in getting new motorbikes and new cars and new patrol cars and so on like that. In respect to the old vehicles that were there before, also see increased evidence of the speed vans in different locations around the country, which are obviously having an impact in terms of people being aware that their speeds are being monitored, and obviously there are consequences to that. But I'd suggest that Taoiseach and Minister for Justice would be happy to discuss with the Transport Committee the question of the allocations to the various sectors of the Gardaí. But it is a decision, of course, for the Commissioner at the end of the day, and Government will continue to do its best in respect of supplying facilities to the Gardaí so that they can carry out their duty in a professional and efficient manner with the best up-to-date standards that apply.